1910 Michigan Wolverines football team. The 1910 Michigan Wolverines football team represented the University of Michigan in the 1910 college football season. The team's head coach was Fielding H. Yost in his 10th season at Michigan. While playing a schedule that included some of the best teams in the country, Michigan compiled an undefeated 3-0-3 record and outscored opponents 29-9. Early in the season, the Wolverines defeated a Michigan Agricultural Aggies team that compiled a record of 6-0 and outscored opponents other than Michigan 165-2, including a 17-0 victory over Notre Dame. The Wolverines tied a Penn team that compiled a 9-1 record in 1910 while outscoring opponents 184-19. They also tied an Ohio State team that finished the season with a 6-1-3 record and outscored opponents 182. In the final game of the season, Michigan shut out an undefeated Minnesota team that had outscored its previous opponents 179-0. On defense, the 1910 Wolverines did not give up a touchdown all season, shut out the final three opponents, and gave up an average of 1.5 points per game. At the end of the season, the team was recognized as the champions of the West. 3 Michigan players received first-team All-American honors. Left guard and team captain Albert Benbrook was selected as a consensus first-team All-American for the second consecutive year. Stanfield Wells, who played 3 games at right tackle and 3 games at right end, was selected as a first-team All-American by Walter Camp. Left halfback Joe Magid was the team's leading scorer and also received first-team All-American honors from some selectors. 6 Michigan players received first-team All-Western honors, including Benbrook, Wells, Magid, tackle William P. Edmonds and Stanley Borlesk, and center Arthur Cornwell. Schedule. Season summary. Preseason. In August 1910, Dave Allardyce, captain of the 1909 Michigan Wolverines football team, was hired as an assistant coach with responsibility for developing a kicker. Allardyce joined Prentice Douglas, Germany Schulz, and Curtis Redden as Fielding H. Yost's assistant coaches. Michigan opened its preseason training camp at Whitmore Lake, Michigan, on September 19, 1910. Coach Yost opined that the 1910 season would see a more open style of play under the new rules with reduced risk of injuries. Training camp began with light conditioning work, then progressed to more strenuous labors. The squad began with 11 players at Whitmore Lake but grew larger as more players arrived over the 2 weeks. Halfback Joe Magid arrived at Whitmore Lake 10 days later but was in splendid condition after hard summer's work. As the work at Whitmore Lake concluded, the Detroit Free Press wrote that the team was rounding into form rapidly and looked like a machine. The Free Press opined that the backfield showed plenty of speed, and the line appeared to be Michigan's strongest in years. Preseason practice continued at Ferry Field during the first week of October. On October 5, 1910, Michigan announced that Grover Dutch Harrington, regarded by Coach Yost as one of the most promising backfield men he has found in several seasons, had suffered a broken bone in his right leg and would be unable to play during the 1910 season. Case. Michigan opened its 1910 season at Ferry Field in a 3-3 tie with the team from Cleveland's Case Scientific School. The game was the 14th meeting between the two programs, and Michigan had won all 13 of the prior games by a combined score of 354-37. On the eve of the 1910 season opener against Case, Coach Yost expressed satisfaction with his team. "These boys are playing fine football. They are the best we have sent against Case in the past 5 years." The game was played in good weather before the largest opening day crowd in Michigan history. In the first quarter, Michigan received excellent field position after a Case punt from behind the goal line traveled only 31 yards. After advancing to the 7-yard line, right guard George M. Lawton Place kicked a field goal from the 20-yard line. In the second quarter, Case received excellent field position when Lawton punted from behind Michigan's goal line. Case's quarterback Goss made a fair catch at the 33-yard line. Heller kicked a field goal to tie the score. In the Detroit Free Press, E.A. Batchelor wrote, "For the first time in many years what had come to be regarded as a fixed festival here will be omitted in 1910 for Case, instead of submitting meekly to the annual licking. Played Michigan to a standstill. This is all very lovely for the Clevelanders who consider the feat of tying the Yost team the event of their lives." The game was played in 10-minute quarters. Michigan's starting lineup against Case was Daniels left end, Edmonds left tackle, Benbrook left guard, Cole center, Lawton right guard, Wells right tackle, Pattengill right end, McMillan quarterback, Magidson left halfback, Green right halfback, and Wenner fullback. Ranch Rickey served as the head linesman. Michigan Agricultural. In the second week of the season, Michigan defeated Michigan Agricultural by a 6-3 score at Ferry Field. It was the fifth game in the Michigan-Michigan State football rivalry, and Michigan had a 3-0-1 record in the four prior meetings, outscoring the Aggies by a combined total of 204-0. The Aggies came into the 1910 game at Ann Arbor with a 2-0 record, having beaten two prior opponents by a total of 46-0. The 1910 Aggies compiled a record of 6-0 and outscored opponents 165-2 against teams other than the Wolverines, including a 17-0 victory over Notre Dame. Prior to the Michigan game, the MAC student body adopted the slogan, "On to Michigan," after a scoreless first half. On the second occasion, Thompson kicked from his 50-yard line, and the low punt was blocked and rolled to Michigan's 12-yard line, where the Aggies left tackle Campbell recovered the ball. After Michigan stopped two runs, the Aggies right halfback, Hill, kicked a field goal from the 21-yard line. The Aggies maintained a 3-0 into the fourth quarter. With less than 5 minutes left in the game, Shorty McMillan completed a pass to Stanley Borlesk, who ran 50 yards to the Aggies' 15-yard line. Don Green then carried the ball to the 3-yard line. Due to a penalty, the Wolverines had 5 unsuccessful chances to score the touchdown after advancing to the 3-yard line. Michigan then lined up for a field goal, but the play was a fake. Green took the snap from center and ran for the touchdown. Conklin kicked the extra point, and Michigan won by a score of 6-3. After the game, Coach Yost praised the Michigan Agricultural team as remarkably strong. The referee, Ralph Hoagland, commented on Michigan's use of the news rules. "Yost has certainly taught his men some great things about the forward pass." The game was played in 15-minute quarters. Michigan's starting lineup against Michigan Agricultural was Borlesk left end, Edmonds left tackle, Benbrook left guard, Bogle center, Conklin right guard, Wells right tackle, Pattengill right end, McMillan quarterback, Magidson left halfback, Green right halfback, and Thompson fullback. Ranch Rickey was the head linesman. At Ohio State. In the third week of the 1910 season, Michigan played Ohio State to a 3-3 tie at Columbus, Ohio. The game was the 12th meeting in the Michigan-Ohio State football rivalry, with Michigan having won 10 of the prior meetings and tied once. The 1910 Ohio State team was coached by former Yale coach Howard Jones, who was later inducted into the College Football Hall of Fame. The only scoring in the game consisted of an exchange of field goals in the second quarter. A forward pass from Shorty McMillan to Stanfield Wells took the ball to the Ohio State 5-yard line. After an offside penalty and no gain on a fake kick, Frederick L. Conklin kicked a field goal from the 15-yard line to give Michigan a 3-0 lead. Ohio State tied the score with a field goal by its left halfback, Wells, later in the second quarter. Neither team scored in the second half. The Detroit Free Press reported on the celebratory atmosphere in Columbus after the game. "Seldom has such a demonstration been seen on Ohio Field as was carried out by the OSU Rooters when the teams left the field after the final whistle. The band played, the Rooters swarmed the field, hugged their mule mascot, and went daffy in general. The town is in the hands of the celebrators tonight, the state contingent considering a tie score practically a victory for their team. Michigan's lineup against Ohio State starters listed first was Borlesk left end, Edmonds left tackle, Benbrook left guard, Bogle and Cole center, Conklin right guard, Wells right tackle, Pattingill right end, McMillan quarterback, Magidson left halfback, Green right halfback, and Thompson fullback. Ralph Hoagland of Princeton was the umpire. John Esterline of Purdue was the field judge. At Syracuse. In the fourth week of the 1910 season, Michigan shut out Syracuse 11-0 before a crowd of 11,500 persons at Archbold Stadium in Syracuse, New York. The game was the third played between the schools, with each team having won one game. Joe Magidson scored 2 touchdowns for Michigan. The New York Times wrote of Magidson, "The work of this sturdy warrior was most brilliant from start to finish of the spectacular struggle. Both on the offensive and on the defensive he was a whirlwind." Early in the game, Syracuse held at its 1-yard line. Michigan also was penalized for 105 yards in the game, and 2 of the penalties stopped drives that had penetrated close to Syracuse's goal. Michigan's point total was also limited due to its kicking game. Conklin converted 1 of 2 extra point attempts and missed 5 field goal attempts on a muddy field. Michigan's defense held Syracuse to 1 first down in the entire game, and Syracuse never moved the ball to within 40 yards of Michigan's goal line. The game ended on an interception of a Syracuse pass by Magidson. Michigan's lineup against Syracuse was Edmonds left end, Conklin left tackle, Benbrook left guard, Cornwell center, Quinn and Lawton right guard, Cole right tackle, Wells right end, McMillan quarterback, Magidson left halfback, Pattingill and Green right halfback, and Thompson fullback. Notre Dame canceled. Michigan had been scheduled to play Notre Dame on November 5, 1910. Michigan protested Notre Dame's use of 2 players, George Philbrook and Ralph Dimmick, who had reportedly played more than 4 years of college football. After Notre Dame refused to bench the players, Michigan's Board of Control of Athletics canceled the game. The New York Times reported, "It is understood here that this ends all athletic relations between Michigan and Notre Dame." The 2 teams did not play again for more than 30 years, the longest break in the Michigan-Notre Dame football rivalry. In lieu of the game with Notre Dame, Michigan played a game against the reserves on November 5. The game proved costly, as quarterback Shorty McMillan, who had played every minute of the first 4 games, sustained torn muscles in his shoulder. As a result of the injury, he was unable to play against Penn. At Penn, on November 12, 1910, Michigan played the Penn Quakers to a scoreless tie at Franklin Field in Philadelphia. Since leaving the Big Ten Conference, Michigan had played annual rivalry games against Penn at or near the end of the season. Penn was one of the dominant football programs of the era, winning 7 national championships between 1894 and 1912. The 1910 game was the 6th meeting between the schools. Penn won the first 4 games, and Michigan won the 1909 game. Michigan arrived in Philadelphia on the Thursday afternoon before the game and set up camp in Wayne, Pennsylvania, a Philadelphia suburb. Although the game ended in a scoreless tie, newspapers opined that Michigan had outplayed Penn. In the Detroit Free Press, E.A. Batchelor wrote, "In everything but the count, it was Michigan's game." Yost's men, quoted at the long price of 10-6 in the betting prior to the opening of hostilities, showed a spirit and strength that completely astounded the Easterners. In gaining ground on line bucking, the invaders were so superior to the Quakers that their Pattingill raised his hand for a fair catch at the Michigan 40-yard line, but was buried in the sod by several Penn players. The field judge Beechin did not see Pattingill call for the fair catch and did not call interference. Michigan protested, but the protest was overruled. Under 1910 rules, the penalty would have given Michigan a free kick from the Penn 25-yard line. On another occasion, Stanfield Wells caught a pass and ran 20 yards for what appeared to be a touchdown. However, an official ruled that Wells had stepped outside and the play was called back. A third scoring opportunity was lost after a fumble by Penn. Michigan's right tackle, Wheaton Cole, had the ball in front of him with a clear path ahead. Cole was unable to grab the football and instead kicked it over the goal line where one of Mr. Penn's sons fell on it for a touchback that was a lifesaver to the red and blue hosts. On another occasion, Michigan drove to Penn's 8-yard line and needed 3 yards for a first down. Wells carried the ball on fourth down and was stopped with the ball going to Penn on downs. Batchelor blamed Michigan's inability to score on a rule change preventing the ball carrier from being pushed or pulled across the goal line by his own teammates. He complained about the new game which the reformers invented and handed to that element of the public which believes the gridiron pastime should be a sport for invalids in evening dress. The game was rough and physical. Penn's halfback Sommer was ejected for kicking Frederick Conklin during a play. Despite the rough play, all 11 Michigan starters played the full 60 minutes without substitutions. Quarterback Shorty McMillan was twice hurt so badly that the trainer, Alvin Creamsleen, had to work on him. Batchelor wrote that though they did count 9 on him, McMillan at the end of the game was still barking signals and catching punts, with all the ginger in the world. Eckersall singled out Joe Magidson as the star of the game. In Magidson, Michigan has a great halfback, and his brilliant playing in today's game was the bright feature. He tore through the heavy Penn forwards for substantial gains, while his squirming, turning end runs added many yards to Michigan's total. He was equally effective on the defense, and his ability to solve Penn's offense and direct his teammates to the point of attack had a good deal to do with the checking of the locals' best ground-gaining plays. Maggie was in every play and carried the ball a greater number of times than any other man of either 11. Batchelor praised the work of Michigan captain Albert Benbrook, who loomed like a mountain above the ruck of players and on defense smashed up plays with a vigor that sometimes threatened the very lives of the enemy. The Michigan student band traveled with the team to Philadelphia and burst into song on the slightest provocation, with several band members parading the field and defying Minnesota. After 3 consecutive road games, Michigan concluded its 1910 season at Ferry Field with a 6-0 victory over Minnesota in front of a crowd of more than 20,000 persons. The game was the 9th meeting between the two football programs and the second game in which the teams competed for possession of the Little Brown Jug, the oldest rivalry trophy in American college football. Both teams came into the game undefeated and were considered the best teams in the West. Minnesota had a 6-0 record and had outscored its opponents 179-0. In the 4 weeks before the game, Minnesota had defeated Iowa State 49-0, Nebraska 27-0, Chicago 24-0, and Wisconsin 28-0. The game was expected to decide the Western Championship, and Minnesota fans sent the Gophers off with a parade in their honor. Some even opined that the contest would decide the national championship. In the days leading up to the game, Minnesota officials reportedly challenged the eligibility of George C. Thompson to play against the Gophers. The dean of Michigan's literary department was deputized to investigate. The investigation concluded that Thompson's entrance credits were equivalent to the requirements of the literary department, though not corresponding to the precise subjects enumerated in the university calendar. Nevertheless, Thompson did not play in the Minnesota game. Neither team was able to score in the first 3 quarters. At the end of the 3rd quarter, Michigan drove to the Minnesota 9-yard line. Following the 3-minute intermission before the 4th quarter began, the drive stalled. Fullback George Lawton attempted a field goal, but his kick missed the mark by a foot. With 5 minutes remaining in the game, Michigan finally sustained a touchdown drive. Michigan began the drive at its own 53-yard line. Midfield was the 55-yard line in 1910. With time running out, The Wolverines resorted to the forward pass. On the first play of the drive, Stanfield Wells threw to Stanley Borlesk for a gain of 27 yards to the Minnesota 30-yard line. On the next play, Michigan ran the same play, and Borlesk took the ball for 24 yards to the 3-yard line. Wells ran with the ball on first down and was stopped for no gain. On second down, Wells again ran into the Minnesota defense. With a crowd of players on top of Wells, it was not clear initially whether he had crossed the goal line. When the referee separated the pile, Wells was holding the ball and had crossed over the goal line. E.A. Batchelor described the Niagara of sound that erupted from the stands. Venerable professors, giddy freshmen, staid and usually phlegmatic, businessmen, small boys, pretty girls, and even sweet-faced old ladies stood up and howled until their vocal cords refused to emit another sound. Down on the field, the Michigan team, substitutes, coaches, band, and everyone else who managed to pass the barriers and gain admittance to the enclosure 6 set aside for the elect, swarmed out on the battleground, mingling in one wild, joyous, shouting, hugging, handshaking mob. It took several minutes for the officials to clear the field so that the game could be completed. Conklin kicked the extra point, and the game ended as Minnesota began to drive downfield after Lawton's kickoff. E.A. Batchelor summed up the victory over Minnesota: 2 perfectly executed forward passes, each swift and sure as a rapier's thrust, 2 plunges into the Minnesota line, and Michigan this afternoon has beaten the Gophers, won the undisputed championship of the West, established her claim to be considered the country's best, and proved the superiority. All 11 Michigan starters played the full 60 minutes without substitution. Quarterback Shorty McMillan sustained a broken rib and played the last hour with the injury. Batchelor praised McMillan for his courage. That he must have endured agonies in such a bruising combat easily can be appreciated. The whole history of football records, no gamer exhibition than this. Michigan men who were aware of the boy's condition cheered him until their throats were sore. Batchelor also praised Michigan's defensive effort, noting that Batchelor also noted that Michigan played the most open game that she had shown all season, using the forward pass time and again. Michigan's starting lineup against Minnesota was Borlesk left end, Conklin left tackle, Benbrook left guard, Cornwell center, Bogle right guard, Edmonds right tackle, Wells right end, McMillan quarterback, Magidson left halfback, Pattengill right halfback, and Lawton fullback. Postseason. After the season had ended, the New York Times wrote that by defeating Minnesota, Michigan had captured the Western Football Championship. Walter Eckersall also concluded that Michigan was entitled to the Western Championship. He also wrote a column in the Chicago Daily Tribune opining that Michigan had the best offense in the country, and that its defense was also as good as any other. 3 Michigan players received first-team All-American honors. Left guard and team captain Albert Benbrook was selected as a consensus first-team All-American for the 2nd consecutive year. Stanfield Wells, who played 3 games at right tackle and 3 games at right end, was selected as a first-team All-American by Walter Camp. Left halfback Joe Magidson was the team's leading scorer with 10 points on 2 touchdown runs of 30 and 40 yards against Syracuse, and also received first-team All-American honors from some selectors. 6 Michigan players received first-team All-Western honors. In the Chicago Daily Tribune, Walter Eckersall selected Michigan players for 5 of the 11 first-team positions on his All-Western team. The 5 players so honored by Eckersall were Benbrook left guard, Wells left end, Magidson left halfback, William P. Edmonds right tackle, and Stanley Borlesk right end. Michigan's coach Yost also selected an All-Western team with 5 Michigan players. Yost's selections differed from Eckersall's only in the exclusion of Borlesk and the inclusion of Arthur Cornwell at center. In Collier's Weekly E.C., Patterson selected Benbrook as the best player in the West and named 2 other Michigan players to his All-Western team. In the weeks after the conclusion of the 1910 football season, much attention was focused on the question of whether Michigan should return to the Big Eight Conference. Facing a threatened break in athletic relations with Amos Alonzo Staggs, Chicago Maroons, and a rebuke from the conference, Minnesota was forced to cease scheduling games against Michigan. Michigan remained independent of the conference until 1917 and would not play another game against Minnesota until 1919. Players, varsity letter winners. At the end of the 1910 season, 15 Michigan players were awarded varsity letter M's for their participation on the football team. They were Albert Benbrook. Chicago started 6 games at left guard. Thomas A. Bogle, Jr. Ann Arbor, Michigan started 2 games at center, 1 game at right guard. Stanley Borlesk, Spokane, Washington started 3 games at left end. Wheaton Dudley Cole, Oberlin Hall, Ohio started 2 games at right tackle, 1 game at center, 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 and game at center, at center. Frederick Conklin, Ann Arbor, Michigan started 3 games at left tackle, 2 games at right guard. Arthur B. Cornwell, Saginaw, Michigan started 3 games at center, 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 at center. William P. Edmonds, Youngstown, Ohio started 3 games at left tackle, 2 games at left end, 1 game at right tackle. Donald W. Green, Saginaw, Michigan started 3 games at right halfback. George M. Lawton, Detroit started 1 game at right guard, 1 game at fullback. Joe Magidson, Elkton, Michigan started 6 games at left halfback. Halfback, 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 halfback. Neil Shorty McMillan, Detroit started 6 games at quarterback. Victor R. Pattingill, Lansing, Michigan started 3 games at right halfback. Clement Patrick Quinn, Saginaw, Michigan started 2 games at right guard. George C. Thompson, Cadillac, Michigan started 4 games at fullback. Stanfield Wells, Brewster, Michigan started 3 games at right tackle, 3 games at right end. Reserves: Louis Blake, Buffalo, New York. Fay G. Clark, San Bernardino, California. Raymond D. Cooper, Detroit. Wilbur M. Cunningham, Benton Harbor, Michigan. Louise E. Daniels, Cambridge, Massachusetts, started 1 game at left end. Carol B. Half, Kansas City, Missouri. City, Missouri. James E. Hancock, Indianapolis, Indiana. Adair Hotchkiss, Colorado. Ralph J. Hurlbert, Portland, Oregon. Ernest C. Kanzler, Saginaw, Michigan. Glenn R. Madison, Ann Arbor, Michigan. John J. McDermott, Hubbardston, Michigan. Mayor Morton, Pine Grove Township, Michigan. Michigan, 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 and in Michigan, 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 and Michigan. Emery J. Munson, Mendota, Illinois, Illinois. John A. Nealons, Northville, Michigan. Michigan, 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 Michigan. William Kirkodes, Hovey Falls, Michigan. Frank Picard, Saginaw, Michigan. Charles E. Rickerhauser, Los Angeles. Robert Shaw, Ovid, Michigan, Michigan. Rufus G. Sipple, Ann Arbor, Michigan. Harold F. Stock, Hillsdale, Michigan. Rudolph D. Van Dyke, Lowell, Michigan. Edward J. Walsh, Denver, Colorado. Herbert Gale Watkins, Bay City, Michigan. Henry L. Wenner, Tiffin, Ohio, started one game at fullback. Charles E. Wyman, Unica, Michigan. Scoring leaders, awards and honors. Captain Albert Benbrook. All-Americans, Albert Benbrook, Walter Camp, Tommy Clark. Evening Standard Consensus Team, Leslie's Weekly, New York Telegraph, Stanfield, Wells, Walter Camp, Joe Magidson, Tommy Clark, and New York Telegraph. All Western, Albert Benbrook, Eckersall and Yost, Stanfield, Wells, Eckersall and Yost, Joe Magidson, Eckersall and Yost, William P. Edmonds, Eckersall and Yost, Stanley Borlesque, Eckersall only, and Arthur Cornwell, Yost only. Coaching staff: head coach Fielding H. Yosts, assistant coaches Dave Allardyce, Prentice Douglas, Germany Schulz, Curtis Redden, trainer Alvin Creansley, manager Charles Gordon Spice, director of outdoor athletics Philip Bartelman.